of the extreme fear range, suggesting the mood is improving. The rally, which has triggered trillions of dollars in global stimulus and signs that outbreaks in Italy, Spain, and New York may be losing steam, is providing some relief. The VIX, a measure of stock market volatility, is at its lowest in a month. So, my YouTube just kicked out again. I wonder if there is something that's going on over at YouTube. Because I just went over and checked it again and looked down and I saw Louder with Crowder was getting ready to play, which nobody wants to watch Crowder. Look at the Discord here quick. Yeah, for whatever reason, YouTube keeps kicking out for sure. I don't know if DLive and Twitch are too, so I have no idea what's going on here. But we're gonna battle some technical difficulties and get through. Thanks, Sully. But the market strategists are warning that the trajectory of the crisis remains unpredictable, and they note that it remains difficult to price assets in certain markets. There we go. I'll spit it out eventually. But the tentative ability in asset prices, economies, and markets are nowhere near normal. John Norman, head of cross-asset fundamental strategy at JP Morgan, told clients in a note on Friday. Norman observed that market depth, or the amount of breadth in open orders, remains unusually poor for a recession. Where do we go? Even for a recession, rather. While liquidity always drops during a recession, it dissipated during the current crisis, even faster than in 2008, he said. JP Morgan has said that conditions are right to start slowly increasing exposure to some riskier assets, citing recession-like prices, lighter selling pressure, and extraordinary fiscal stimulus. But the bank still sees the coronavirus itself as a huge wild card. Norman noted that even though the infection rate in Italy and the rest of Europe are slowing, it remains too high to have much confidence in the duration of lockdowns and social distancing, therefore the duration and depth of the recession. His takeaway, risky markets will remain volatile as long as infection rates preserve growth and earnings uncertainty. Others are urging caution too. We believe it is too early to definitively call for a turn in the pandemic, and investors should continue to expect heightened volatility, Mark Hafel, Chief Investment Officer at UBS Global Wealth Management, told clients Tuesday. However, this week's rebound offers a further reminder of the importance of staying invested. So, you can't give a win to anything on the Trump-led economy if you're CNN business, apparently. How we doing? Are we still over there? We still feeding over onto YouTube? It's telling me we are, so I'm going to take that as gospel at this point. Let's look at the oil prices. Trump's promised oil deal still eludes big producers as prices dive again. But Saudi Arabia and Russia appear to be thinking twice about their oil war as their economies start to feel the pain. This is from Keith Johnson and Reed Standish over at Foreign Policy. Major oil producers edge closer to a brokered solution promised by U.S. President Donald Trump as a weeks-long bloodletting in the market slammed their economies, but it appeared any such deal won't come for a few more days at least after Russia and Saudi Arabia renewed their war of words over the weekend. The United States, meanwhile, scrambled to find a way to curtail its own production and secure the desperately needed cooperation of those other two countries. OPEC and other big oil-producing countries were meant to have a virtual meeting Monday to divvy up production cuts that could restore a semblance of balance to a market that has been driven badly out of whack by the global economic collapse due to the coronavirus pandemic. But that meeting has been pushed back until Thursday at least, and Saudi Arabia and the International Energy are pushing for a meeting on Friday of G20 countries to both ensure output cuts and find a way consuming countries can park unwanted oil for the time being. Oil prices skyrocketed last week after Trump assured the world that the United States, Russia, and Saudi Arabia had reached an agreement to cut oil production and shore up plummeting prices, but the elusive agreement has yet to be nailed down. As a result, oil prices are heading south again, with crude in both New York and London down about 5%, returning close to the economically disastrous prices before last week's mini rally. If Russia and Saudi Arabia both blundered into the oil war exactly a month ago, the global economic toll of COVID-19 and the shutting down of major economies have changed their thinking. For Saudi Arabia, its willingness to convene a broader meeting this week of OPEC countries and other big producers, coupled with the first ever delay of setting the sale prices for next month's exports of oil, point to a newfound willingness to reverse course on the open the tap strategy it put into practice at the beginning of March. So they still can't agree, but we still have way too much oil, which means those prices are going to stay down. So look for that and fill your tank if you haven't already. Now we're going to come over from the Daily Wire. So, Michigan Democrat with coronavirus credits Trump with saving her life. I do thank him for that. This is from Ryan Savadra. A Michigan State Democratic lawmaker who was suffering from the coronavirus credited President Donald Trump with saving her life, saying on Monday that his constant touting of hydroxychloroquine is what led her to ask her doctor for the malaria drug. Representative Karen Whitsett, Detroit, said she would be taking hydroxychloroquine on March 31st, prescribed by her doctor, after both she and her husband sought treatment for a range of symptoms on March 18th. The Detroit Free Press reported it was less than 2 hours before she started to feel relief, said Whitsett, who experienced shortness of breath, swollen lymph nodes, and what felt like a sinus infection. Whitsett said that she had taken the drug for a separate medical issue, but would not have thought to ask her doctor about it unless Trump had been repeatedly talking about it. It has a lot to do with the president bringing it up, Whitsett said. He is the only person who has the power to make it a priority. When the Detroit Free Press asked her if she thought Trump may have saved her life, she responded, "Yes, I do. I do thank him for that." Trump set out a link to the report, writing, "Congratulations to State Representative Karen Whitsett of Michigan. So glad you are getting better." Last week, the FDA issued an emergency use authorization permit to the emergency use of hydroxychloroquine sulfate supplied from the Strategic National Stockpile to treat adults and adolescents who weigh 50 kilograms or more and are hospitalized with COVID-19, for whom a clinical trial is not available or participation is not feasible. So they're testing this through. They've got the emergency use, and people are taking advantage of that right to try. And I think it's really going to start helping as we go forward. So this is a good thing, and we're going to see more of this come out. Now, we see some other news on the drug, of course. This is from Yahoo Finance. Hydroxychloroquine is not likely to be a silver bullet for the coronavirus, former White House medical official says. This is from Arthi Swaminathan and Michael B. Kelly over at Yahoo News. The U.S. President Donald Trump has been pushing for the use of an anti-malarial drug, hydroxychloroquine, against the coronavirus, and one prominent doctor says that it could be a problem given the lack of data available. It's just not likely to be a silver bullet, Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel, who served as a special advisor for health policy to the director for the White House Office of Management and Budget during the Obama administration, so he's an Obama guy, take that with a grain of salt, told Yahoo Finance's The Ticker, "We all want a silver bullet, but rather than being overly optimistic and talk about the good feelings that we have, we need to rely on data, because if we just go with our feelings, we're likely to be severely disappointed, and that could be a problem." The president has repeatedly touted hydroxychloroquine as an effective way to combat COVID-19, the disease caused by coronavirus, even as his top medical advisors disagreed with him. "If it does work, it would be a shame we did not do it early," Trump said on Sunday, asserting there are very strong, powerful signs of its effectiveness and adding that the government had stockpiled 29 million pills of the drug. "We are sending them to various labs, we're sending them to the hospitals." On the one hand, Trump asked, "What do we have to lose?" And on the other hand, the president added, "But what do I know? I'm not a doctor, but I do have common sense." There's some anecdotal evidence of the drug being helpful for COVID-19 treatment. A Democratic representative in Michigan credited President Trump after taking hydroxychloroquine as she recovered from COVID-19, and some doctors in major U.S. healthcare systems are now routinely administering the drug as part of the COVID-19 treatment without knowing if it will work. Well, once again, he's right, it's anecdotal, but I have not seen a story yet that says that this is not going to work. And you know, as well as I do, that with the mainstream media in the state that it is, the second that it doesn't work, it's going to be the front headline. And everybody's going to be talking about it, and that's going to be the next thing that they try and impeach the president over. So keep that in mind. No news is good news on this. Now we move over to Fox News because Mika Brzezinski had some words to say. MSNBC's Mika Brzezinski wonders if Trump has a financial tie to hydroxychloroquine. This is from Brian Flood. MSNBC's Morning Joe host, Mika Brzezinski, suggested President Trump has a financial tie to hydroxychloroquine on Monday because he has repeatedly promoted the drug as a possible treatment for the coronavirus. Co-host Joe Scarborough pondered aloud why Trump has pushed an unproven drug when Brzezinski made the claim. A lot of people would say follow the money. There's got to be some sort of financial tie to someone somewhere that has the president pushing this repeatedly, Brzezinski said. The White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Media Research Center contributing editor Mark Finkelstein wrote that Brzezinski's comment is perhaps the most explosive accusation yet against President Trump made by a liberal media member regarding the coronavirus pandemic. Mika must be immediately challenged to produce whatever evidence she might have in support of her explosive claim. But she never will be. To accuse the President of the United States of outright corruption in the midst of the greatest crisis in the lives of most Americans is a libel most vile unless she can substantiate it. But she doesn't have to. It's MSNBC. She doesn't have to at all. MSNBC did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Big surprise. The View co-host Sunny Hostin made a similar remark on Monday, suggesting President Trump may have a financial interest in promoting the drug. I want to know why the president is so convinced that this is the medication that needs to be stockpiled. What's in it for him? I don't know. It seems to be working. Once again, if you see a headline, well, first off, once again, if it doesn't work for somebody, that's going to be the top headline on every one of these news outlets for the next month and a half. And you're never going to hear the end of it. And once again, they will impeach him over it. So what's in it for him? Helping the American people. You dolts. And let's face it, there's always something in it for the president when he wants to tout something. Limited studies have suggested hydroxychloroquine, an anti-malarial drug, could treat coronavirus. An international poll of thousands of doctors recently rated hydroxychloroquine as the most effective therapy for coronavirus. It's cheap, it's readily available, and it seems to be working. What's the downside here? Another 6 months of panic and the global economy shutting down? All right, speaking of things global on this story, let's talk about Boris Johnson. This is also from Fox News. Boris Johnson given oxygen, but not on a ventilator after coronavirus-stricken PM moved to intensive care. This is from David Arrow. Boris Johnson was given oxygen overnight, but did not require a ventilator, according to a senior cabinet minister, speaking a day after the coronavirus-stricken UK Prime Minister was moved to a London hospital's intensive care unit. Since Sunday evening, the Prime Minister has been in St. Thomas's Hospital in London as the country fights the epidemic. COVID-19 deaths are nearing 5,400 in the UK and 11,000 in the US. Johnson has been receiving the very best care from the team at St. Thomas. Well, of course, he's the Prime Minister. And our hopes and prayers are with him and his family, Senior Cabinet Minister Michael Gove said. He is kept under close supervision. By being in intensive care, there is further support he needs is there at hand, but the Prime Minister has not been on a ventilator, Gove said, according to Sky News. A spokesman for Mr. Johnson later confirmed that the PM has been stable overnight and remains in good spirits. He has received standard oxygen treatment and is breathing without ventilation or non-invasive respiratory support. There has been no diagnosis of pneumonia. Gove himself later announced he would be going into self-isolation after a family member showed symptoms. The government previously said the decision was a precaution and that the Prime Minister had been in good spirits earlier in the day. Johnson asked Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab to deputize him, the spokesman said. So, to a speedy recovery for Mr. Gove, Michael Gove. I do hope that you don't get this and you don't have to be hospitalized, and I do wish for a speedy recovery for Prime Minister Johnson as well. Godspeed, sir. Let's look more into the Daily Wire now. Read it. Truckers sent letter to Trump warning supply chain could be in jeopardy. This is from James Barrett over at the Daily Wire. Truckers associations and trucking officials are sounding the alarm over a potential disruption in the all-important supply chain if more action to protect drivers is not taken. In an open letter addressed to President Trump on Friday, the Missouri-based Owner-Operators Independent Drivers of America, or Association rather, issued an urgent message titled Help Mayday 911. Urgent and immediate action is demanded to safeguard our nation's supply chain, the letter said, signed by OOIDA President and CEO Todd Spencer. Small business truckers and professional drivers are the vital link to it all, putting their lives on the line for the good of the nation, the letter continues. Every day they are exposed to COVID-19 because the critical services they provide for all of us, every single day. They run in and out of hot zones, and without question they are exposed. They don't have access to PPE or any practical means to know when they may be falling ill or any practical solution if they need treatment or self-isolation. Access to testing must be available where they are, particularly on busy truck routes, writes Spencer, and testing must show results in hours, not days. Along with that, we need strategy for treatment or quarantine that could take place at nearby motels. Right now, professional drivers are busting their butts to care for the nation, he stresses. Their hard work and personal sacrifice should not include their health or even their lives, if at all possible or preventable. Once word spreads that drivers are testing positive, we could all very well see a tremendous reduction in drivers willing to risk everything for the rest of us. We need a plan for them. We need help. The letter concludes, do it. As the Kansas City Star reports, Spencer is not the only industry leader calling for swift action to stave off a possible supply chain disruption. The Teamsters National Freight Division is also calling attention to the potential problem. Predicting that things are going to get worse before they get better, Teamsters National Freight Division Director Ernie Sale said Friday that they've already seen some terminals at which employees have tested positive for the virus and were forced to quarantine multiple people as a result. One terminal was temporarily shut down due to a lower-level supervisor testing positive, Sale explained, resulting in approximately 18 members and 6 non-bargaining unit employees who had been in contact with the supervisor to be placed in a mandatory 14-day quarantine. A similar situation played out at another station, he said. Some steps to help ease the situation for truckers have already been taken, including the Department of Transportation's Federal Highway Administration suspending a law prohibiting commercial activity on interstate highway rest areas, allowing commercial food trucks in those areas, the Star notes. FHWA recognizes that in those states, food trucks may provide vital sustenance for interstate commercial truck drivers and others who are critical to the nation's continued ability to deliver the needed food and relief supplies to the communities impacted by the economic disruptions and healthcare strains caused by COVID-19, reads a press release issued on Friday. So, for owner-operators, first off, even if load prices had stayed the same, you guys have got to be making bank right now because your fuel costs are down severely in most places. In California, they're not, obviously, but for most places across Middle America, your fuel prices are way down. I don't know if you consider that hazard pay, and I don't broker or anything, so I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised to see if some prices on some loads have actually gone up because there's been such a demand for things. So it's just some things to think about. I'm not 100% sure what goes on the financial side of trucking. I work on the repair side, but I can't imagine you're not making money right now either. And I've got a great thanks for everybody who's out doing this still, because you are the lifeblood of this country. Anything that comes to anybody comes in a truck. So, that is something to keep in mind. And thank you to everybody who drives a truck that watches this show either live or on the replay. Let's move on into some stuff that's not COVID-19, though. This is from Fox News. I've got two on this story from Fox News. Rose McGowan trashes fraud Alyssa Milano for backing Biden amid assault claim, invokes Kavanaugh hypocrisy. This is from Joseph A. Wolfsound over at Fox News. Actress turned activist Rose McGowan eviscerated her former Charmed co-star Alyssa Milano for her continued support of former Vice President Joe Biden amid a newly surfaced sexual assault accusation. Milano, who was an outspoken advocate for the Me Too movement and a celebrity endorser of the Democratic frontrunner, addressed her silence on the 1993 assault allegation made by Tara Reade, a former staffer for the then senator who came forward with her assault claim last month. I had not publicly said anything about this. If you remember, it kind of took me a long time to say anything about Harvey Weinstein as well, because I believe that even though we should believe women, but that does not mean at the expense of giving men their due process and investigating situations, Milano said during a radio interview on Monday, it's got to be fair in both directions. Oh, honey. Oh, no. 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 The internet is forever. You don't get to get away with that. No. We all know what you said about Kavanaugh, and we all know what you said about Trump. No, honey, no, you're not going to get away with this one. Milano then pointed to a report about how the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund chose not to take up Reade's case as part of her reasoning to support Biden, although she didn't disclose to radio host Andy Cohen that the reasoning behind the organization's decision was because it did not want to jeopardize its nonprofit status while going after a presidential candidate. No, it's politically expedient for them is the reason they're not going after it right now. You guys got to get it right if you're going to report it. No, honey, no, you can't go out and say believe all women and then not believe all women. I said that the Tara Reade thing is likely either going to go nowhere because there's no corroborating evidence for it, or is bullshit because there's no corroborating evidence for it. But I've at least been intellectually consistent with all the other cases, because I said the same thing about everything that they lobbed against the president and Kavanaugh. I don't think anything's going to come out of the Biden thing, and to be honest, I don't think it's real. I think that this is some Bernie Bro girl who is pissed off at the fact that Biden made it to the top. Otherwise, this would have come out a long time ago when he was running as the vice president, or even earlier on in the race. This would have come out long ago. This is a Hail Mary to try and make sure that Bernie gets to the top of the ticket. Or it happened and there's no evidence to it. In either way, you can't prove it in a court of law. I should probably put that out there because that first part is what's going to get clipped. So, we got one more thing on this story here. This is also from Fox News. This is from Julius Young. Alyssa Milano explains silence on Joe Biden's sexual assault allegation. Says, men deserve due process. Alyssa Milano is defending her decision to stay silent in the wake of a recently surfaced allegation against former Vice President Joe Biden by a former Senate staffer, Tara Reade, who claims he sexually assaulted her in 1993. Milano, 47, spoke with radio host Andy Cohen on Monday during his SiriusXM broadcast, and when Cohen brought up the fact that once again Milano had been a trending topic on Twitter, he gave the actress the floor to speak on the matter, and she did so, choosing her words gingerly. It's because she knows she's trapped. She's trapped in this intellectual fallacy, and she doesn't know how to get out of it. So it's actually a quite serious reason, I think. So I endorsed Joe Biden, and there have been accusations against Joe about sexual assault, Milano began. I have not publicly said anything about this. The Charmed alum famously attended the Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh's Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on Capitol Hill in 2018, where Christine Blasey Ford testified that that he sexually assaulted her in the early 80s. She said has always been taken a wait and see approach to these sensitive matters, and the predicament Biden has found himself in is no different. She explained to Cohen, "If you remember, it kind of took me a long time to publicly say anything about Harvey Weinstein as well, because I believe that even though we should believe women, and that is an important thing, and what that statement really means is, like, for so long, the go-to has been not to believe them. So really, we have to sort of societally change that mindset, believing all women. But that does not mean at the expense of not, giving men their due process and investigating situations and giving, it's got to be fair and in both directions," Milano added. You knew this was going to come back to bite her. You just knew it. So I actually quite interested to see how this all turns out because, there's nothing to investigate on the Biden case at this point. It happened in an alley with nobody around 30 years ago almost. So there's nothing to investigate there. But it would be interesting to see what comes out of this, if anything. If the mainstreams even start talking about this. I'm a little surprised to see this on Fox, but... Alright, last story here before we check Twitter trending. Wisconsin holds its primary election in the middle of the pandemic, which I'm going to throw some clothes on and go vote in here as soon as we're off the air. Wisconsin this is from Eric Bradner, over at CNN. I read the headline already. Republicans who insist... I'm sorry, I missed a paragraph. Wisconsin on Tuesday is holding its primary in the middle of a pandemic. Republicans who have insisted on holding the election on schedule won 2 legal battles Monday, as the state Supreme Court blocked Democratic Governor Tony Evers' bid to delay it until June, and the U.S. Supreme Court reversed a lower court's ruling that gave voters 6 extra days to return ballots by mail. Every other state with an election scheduled for April postponed their contest or shifted it to by mail voting only. Sometimes I lose track when I go between lines. I apologize. But Monday's court decision means Wisconsin, with 2,511 reported cases of coronavirus and 85 dead as of late Monday night, is pressing forward, though votes won't be counted until at least April 13th. It has positioned Wisconsin as the first battleground over voting rights in a year, in which the question of how elections are conducted could be shaped by the coronavirus pandemic, as Democrats seek funding for expanded vote-by-mail options across the nation, and Republicans express concerns about election security. Lines on Tuesday could be long, so many poll workers quit that Milwaukee consolidated its 180 polling places down to just 5 locations. Yeah, that's going to make for some long lines. Staffing will look different. Nearly 300 of the state's National Guard troops will be replacing volunteers who quit. And thousands of people requested absentee ballots ahead of last week's deadline, but they won't receive those ballots in time to mail them back, according to data reported by local clerks to the Wisconsin Elections Commission. Those people will be forced to choose between voting in person or skipping the election. Everything that could go wrong has gone wrong with this election, not because of the pandemic, but because of the cruel choices made by Republican politicians and their pet judges, said Satya Rhodes Conway, the Democratic mayor of Madison. Yeah, that sounds like something a mayor of Madison would say. State and local elections officials were forced to craft procedures over the last few weeks to conduct the election, despite the public health concerns. The Wisconsin Elections Commissions worked with the state's health department to develop procedures for in-person voting that included a public health checklist for poll workers, limiting how many people can be in each location at a time and making signs to let voters know what to do if they are experiencing symptoms. Voters will also be asked to sanitize their hands at the start and the end of the process. At their polling locations, voters may see tape on the floor with 6-foot line designations as well. When they step up to poll book tables, there will be 6-foot markers on both sides for voters and poll workers. Voters will step up to the table when instructed, set down their ID, and step away while the poll worker examines but not touches the ID. The poll worker will then open the poll book for the voter to sign, step away, and ask the voter. Now, that sounds like it's going to take forever. Sign it with a provided pen they can keep or discard after voting. Well, I got a fountain pen, kids. Buy a fountain pen. Late moves lead to confusion. The question of whether to hold the election Tuesday has turned into a bitter partisan battle in recent days, but Evers lagged far behind other governors in moving to delay his state's primary, waiting until 11 days before the election to ask the GOP-led legislature to send every voter a ballot by mail, a request Republicans immediately rejected, and until Monday to sign an executive order that would delay the election until June 9th, a move the conservative-dominated state Supreme Court halted. Those late moves led to confusion and chaos for local election officials who were navigating severe shortages of poll workers and surge in absentee ballot requests. Nearly 1.3 million people had asked for absentee ballots, according to the Wisconsin Elections Commission's tally, which is based on reports by local clerks. Nearly 550,000 of these ballots had not been returned as of Monday morning, and 11,090 people requested ballots but had not even been mailed these ballots. The U.S. Supreme Court's decision Monday required that in order to be counted, absentee ballots must be postmarked no later than Tuesday and must arrive by April 13th. The thousands of people who requested ballots but will not receive them in time for their ballots to be postmarked by Tuesday, Wisconsin Elections Commission's administrator Megan Wolf told the commission's 6 members on an emergency call Monday night, can only vote in person. So, we've known this was going to be a problem for a while. And I would be okay with the delay of the election. I absolutely would. But we've known about this since the beginning of March, and it was just 11 days ago that Evers decided to do something. So yeah, if I was in the legislature, I would have probably told Evers to get bent too. Again, if he'd have done this in March, we'd probably be having a different conversation about this. But because he waited till the last minute to figure out what to do, yeah, there's no way I would have done this, because I don't trust Evers as far as I can throw him, or any of his handlers as well. So, good for them for keeping this on and honest. Once again, I don't like the idea that it's going on during a pandemic, but given the fact that they tried to throw it together in the end without any time to prepare, no. Get bent, Evers. Take action sooner next time. So, on Tuesday, the last thing we always do is check the Twitter trending hashtags. So, let's see what we've got going on here. Let's go ahead and go to the home page and refresh. So we get the freshest ones going on here. So, first one, U.S. Supreme Court is trending. I'm about to explode. The 5 GOP U.S. Supreme Court justices do not have a party affiliation. Overruled 2 lower courts and shut off extended absentee voting in Wisconsin. So this is having to do with what we just talked about. By a 5-4 vote, the U.S. Supreme Court reverses a lower court order extending the deadline for mail-in ballots in Wisconsin. All 4 liberals dissent. Of course they do. The conservative majority just effectively threw out thousands of ballots. Incredible. No, they haven't gone yet. And like I said, they still have the option to go to the polling place, because Evers dropped the ball and did this at the last fucking minute. So, go to the polls. Once again, if we'd had a month to prepare for this, because we had a month to prepare for this, this would be a completely different story. Alex Halpern tweets, the U.S. Supreme Court voted 5-4 to murder some people in this line for politics. The usual sort of hyperbole that you would see in something like this. The U.S. Supreme Court forced these people to stand in line this morning while the rest of the country is in isolation. To vote, to vote, to vote, to fucking vote. If you don't know why Kavanaugh was put on the court, now you do. And seriously, oh, okay. So we knew that this pandemic was coming 2 years ago when they nominated Kavanaugh. Is that what you're going to try and tell me? Alright, I'm done with that trend. Scrapple is trending. I don't know what Scrapple is. Scrapple is garbage and feigning affection for its coping mechanism for people forced to live in Philadelphia. You can only pick 3. That, my dear, is Scrapple, and it's fucking delicious. Do not ask what it's made of. 1, 5, and 7. Scrapple is the supreme breakfast. So this is one of those, you can only pick 3, and everything else has to go with things that went around on Twitter, and apparently nobody knew what Scrapple was, and I don't either. But given the picture, it kind of looks delicious, and I kind of want to know. So, my Philadelphia audience, can you tell me what we've got going on here? Maybe I'll go ask Fritz after this. I know he's not in Philadelphia, but he's close by enough that he might know what it is. So, what's our next one? Wisconsin GOP. Wisconsin GOP is threatening the lives of its own constituents and its public health risk for neighboring states like Minnesota. Unconscionable. Thank you, Representative Ilhan Omar. Once again, Evers waited till the last minute to do this. And you know why he did this? I bet you he did this so that we would have this headline going up. Because, hey, if we'd had a chance to prepare, then you wouldn't be able to say evil GOP. I hate Evers. Stephanie Grisham is going to be the last one that we see. Everyone seems upset that Stephanie Grisham would never brief the press, but also everyone also seems upset that Trump is briefing the press every single day, so make up your minds, people. This is from Ben Shapiro. Jim Sciutto says, breaking, Stephanie Grisham is out as White House press secretary. She's leaving the job without ever having briefed the press. Well, to be fair, if the president is getting up himself in front of the press every day, why do we need a press secretary? And why did we lose Sarah Huckabee Sanders anyway? I miss her. I loved watching her slap around Jim Acosta. We need to get Sarah Sanders back. So, Stephanie Grisham, White House press secretary, is out, and that's going to be our Twitter trending hashtags. So, I'm going to go vote. I know this was a short show and we were plagued with technical difficulties. The audio obviously is not going to come until probably later on tonight because I don't know if I have to thread all this together or not. But we will get the audio out as soon as possible. I'm going to throw some clothes on. I'm going to go vote and get some breakfast over at the local convenience store because they've got a really good breakfast program here. And we will be back here later on tonight with some more Dead Money. So be there. I know I'll enjoy seeing you and enjoy playing video games. And for those of you on DLive, because I forgot it last night, make sure you get in as well and get in on DLive because I'm going to be popping the chest sometime while we're playing Dead Money tonight. So come over and check that out. Come and enjoy it. Have some fun with us, and we will see you later. Otherwise, we will be back here tomorrow with more news, headlines, and stocks, and more craziness from the world. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.